we're ready to get started. So welcome today. We're so happy to have you today for this 7th Coffee at 10. This is our 7th this season. And today, Carol Irving will be giving a talk, Weaver's Journal of Endangered Wildflowers. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors. We have amazing sponsors that support this program. And Comfort Keepers is our visual arts sponsor, David and Teresa Kraus. These are sponsors that supported this exhibition that Carol's in. David and Teresa Kraus, Michigan Arts and Culture Council, the NEA, and the Charlevoix Community Foundation. Of course, I want to thank Roast and Toast for the coffee and fresh baked goods that you can help yourself to out there. So before Carol gets started, I just want to say a few words about Carol. Carol was born in Detroit, and she earned a degree in botany, lived in New Mexico and then Oregon, and then moved to the Upper Peninsula when she was 24. And Carol always had a love for art, particularly fiber arts. She took an introductory class in weaving while she was in college and began to explore this art form on her own. Over many years, she has fine-tuned her craft into an art. She's taken many workshops from noted weavers, and I've heard some people talking about weaving out there, so I know some of you know the amazing British rug weaver Peter Collingwood, so she took classes with him. Her works have won awards and honors and juried art and fiber shows throughout northern Midwestern states, and her work was included in the recently published book, The Art of Weaving. Last thing I want to say is Carol's been weaving for quite a while, but in 2017, she embarked on a new journey in her weaving style, this time incorporating her background and love for botanical sciences and wildflowers. She created a 12-panel series, A Weaver's Journal of Endangered Wildflowers. And I think you're going to talk about that today. Her works can be found in private and public collections, and she hopes to share her love of fiber and color with those who read her work. So thank you, Carol.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. Thanks, Sheila. So welcome and good morning to all of you that are here. Wow, this is a great showing, and I believe there's people watching via Zoom and Facebook Live, so that's great. I am Carol Irving, as Sheila said, and I live and weave in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And there, see the red arrow? There's Escanaba, along the shores of Lake Michigan. So that's the view outside of my house. And that's our neighbor's tiki hut. You can see it right there, that we get to use it often. It's great fun. So thank you so much for having me today. I came here to share my love of fiber, weaving, and wildflowers. Today, I'll be talking about my path to weaving and a project that has become very special to me. And there I am sitting at my Harrisville rug loom. I was talking with some other weavers already this morning, and you can see the levers on my rug loom. Those enable me to do the designing that I do. So I've been a weaver since I was in high school. I learned how to make a frame loom, much like what you see there, and weave yarns and found objects into tapestries using bark, twigs, feathers, shells, and other found objects. In college, I continued to weave these small tapestries while I worked on a degree in botany and plant sciences. That photo is not me, but it could have been. Because I worked in a lot of greenhouses as I worked on my degree. My husband's first job as a teacher brought us to northern New Mexico. It was there that I found my first floor loom, sold to me with a bench, yarn, and shuttles. I taught myself to warp and weave on this 4-harness loom that didn't have a brand name or anything. I think it had been handmade by some other weaver. This same loom was packed and unpacked a few times until we finally found our home in Escanaba, Michigan. That's where my husband's from. And that's where it was set up in its new home in our dining room. In the early 90s, I was the recipient of a scholarship to take a class with Peter Collingwood. And so there's myself and he, and I don't know why he's going through his wallet there, but a master weaver from Great Britain. We learned all about best practices for weaving good rugs, block weaving, and an introduction to shaft switching. This was specifically for weft face rugs woven with linen warp and wool for weft. Well, that week-long class changed everything for me. I was hooked. Soon after that workshop, I invested in the Harrisville rug loom with the shaft switching mechanism or set of switches. Shaft switching is a weaving technique that allows the weaver to freely change a pattern in the warp with the flip of a lever. And there you can see the levers, and I've got them numbered for ease of use. This makes it possible to weave designs that are otherwise extremely difficult, if not impossible, to achieve. In these slides, you can see the rug loom with a project, the one on the right, and a close-up of the actual levers that I use to control or create the design. So the image on the right also shows the document holder right here. And so that's holding my cartoon, and there's numbers along the top of it, and then this slide rule, it goes up and down. So I start at the bottom of the cartoon and I work my way up. And so there's numbers there that correlate to the levers that you see over there. Early photograph of me. My husband built a small studio for me in our basement, and it was about 10 by 10 feet square, and I was in heaven. I would get up early before my family of husband and 2 growing boys and weave. Some of their early memories of that time is the bam, bam sound of the beater hitting the weaving. My first shaft switch rugs look something like this. I was doing more and more art and craft sales in the UP. And if you don't know what the UP is, that's the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and beyond to Wisconsin, Illinois, and Lower Michigan. It was in and around this time that I was also teaching weaving for the Delta County Mental Health Department in their day program. They had 2 locations where clients with varying mental or physical disabilities attended. It was my job to set up the looms and come up with projects that could be accomplished by this population of people and could be sold at various outlets. Are you people aware of a business in Lowell, Michigan called Ability Arts? And Beryl, I think is her name, and she's doing something quite like this. And she has a retail shop and she's doing great things. I highly recommend that you look her up on Facebook or wherever. I'm sure they have a website as well. So I worked for and with these folks for about 12 years. In the late 90s, I decided to go back to school. Our 2 sons were in high school and soon to be going off to college. So for 2 years, I went back to school and earned a degree in accounting, graduating in 1999, and I worked for a local public accounting firm for about 3 years. And then at that time, I had so much going on, my weaving was put on hold. In 2002, I became the business manager of a growing computer services company, and so began my new working life, working during the day and weaving at night and some weekends. Luckily, I was finding some time to weave, and in 2006, my piece, Desert Jewel, pictured here, won first place in the 13th annual Northern Exposure exhibit in Escanaba, and also won purchase prize awarded by Bay College in Escanaba. This piece is now part of their permanent collection. I designed this piece and many more using graph paper. In 2009, Starry Starry Night won the Purchase Prize Award in another Northern Exposure exhibit and was purchased again by Bay College, also now part of their permanent collection. By this time, I had started to design my weavings using Excel spreadsheets. Do any of you employ that? Yeah, it's a great tool. So here I have lots of yarns to choose from when I'm creating my projects. Sometimes just seeing all the colors available can act as inspiration for my next piece. I use linen for the warp, and if anybody wants to know, I use 8/5 rug warp linen. And wool, or a blend of wool and nylon for the weft. So I'm usually using 4 strands of this rug wool on each shuttle. This slide shows me standing at my warping board, and that is how I prepare my loom. I prepare or make a warp on the warping board, excuse me, and then bring that to the loom and put it on. And I'm a front to back warper, not back to front, but front to back. That's just the way I've done it. And I usually put about 20 yards of warp onto the loom, which will produce about 9 weavings. Generally, the panels that I do for these, they're approximately 3 by 5 feet. I have a wonderful yarn source, and they're doing wonderful things for their community and for the earth. They're called Learning from Scratch. They are a 501c3 nonprofit located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Learning from Scratch works with business and industry, identifying and repurposing their waste and excess materials for use in art and education. They work very closely with companies with waste reduction and reusing their products in the community. I'm so excited to have found them, as they are a local and in my state of Michigan. They're working with another Michigan company, a Michigan carpet manufacturer, repurposing their unused yarn in their manufacturing process. So everyone benefits in their waste minimization. So when the carpet manufacturer is done with a certain line of carpets, and they still have all this coned, and you can see the cones of yarn. One of the negatives is you never know what you're going to get, and there's probably no repeat. You know, that you can't go back to them and say, this purple is the one I want. But you're getting 2 to 5 pounds at a time, and oftentimes I'm weaving, like I said, with 3 strands at a time, and they could be different values of a purple to make up that color. Pictured here are 2 of the many looms that I have. Each loom has a certain purpose and is one I prefer for certain types of weaving projects. The larger loom on the right is a 4-harness Norwood, probably made in Michigan. To the left is an 8-harness baby wolf that folds up even with a project on it. Perfect for demonstrations and workshops. And there's my hair. There I am working on the hair spill. And a woven rug on the floor that I did on that loom. And let me back up one. Here I am weaving on my larger loom, the Harrisville rug loom. And then this spring, I was able to acquire a second Harrisville rug loom. I have now begun to invite students into my home studio for instruction and extended lodging. So I have a guest room, and I allow people use of the kitchen privileges. I do not cook for people, but you can go shopping. We have an airport probably a mile away. I could pick you up at the airport if you choose. We have kayaking and bike riding. We're on the end of a dead end that ends on a state marsh property. It's a beautiful spot. So word is spreading thanks to Facebook, and students are coming for instruction from Texas, Washington, and Illinois, just to name a few. Many things have happened in my weaving life between 2009 and the years after, particularly around the year 2016. This is when my journey called A Weaver's Journal of Endangered Wildflowers starts. I was able to write an article which appeared in Handwoven magazine in 2020, and I will read from it here. There are many steps to accepting a challenge. A good friend of mine, Pasqua Worsler, retired gallery director of the Boniface Arts Center, that's in Escanaba, proposed just such a challenge to me. She suggested, back to the beginning of flowers. There we go. She suggested I come up with a body of work and she would hang it in the main gallery. She usually filled her calendar 2 years out, and she gave me a tentative date of early 2018. I was eager to get started, but of course I needed an idea or focus for this series. In 2016, at the time of the challenge, I had been a weaver for about 43 years. I had dabbled in many weaving techniques, gone to many workshops and seminars over the years, but in the mid-90s, I was the recipient of a scholarship to attend a Peter Collingwood workshop outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was here, learning about rug weaving and shaft switching, that I changed my views on weaving. Up until that time, I had woven many rugs, employing techniques like block weave, rep, rag weaving, and weft face rugs. But this was a game changer for me. A few years later, I was able to purchase the Harrisville rug loom and shaft switcher. The shaft switcher is a series of levers on the loom that increases the design capability while weaving. So when I was faced with this challenge, I had been weaving shaft switched rugs and wall hangings for many years. This was my loom of choice, and this was the technique I preferred to express my visions. My means of design had changed and developed over the years. So on the left, you can see that the design on graph paper, and again, numbers on the bottom, numbers along the side, and then the different blocked areas, even indicating perhaps color changes. And I've woven this same design in quite a few different colorations. It lends itself very easy to that. So there I've started with graph paper for designing. Also with graph paper, this one's called Windward. Excel spreadsheets. So here's the design in the Excel program or as the printout. Again, numbers on the bottom, numbers along the side, and there's the actual weaving of that cartoon. Eventually to a software product called Stitch Painter. There's chairs up here. Stitch Painter is produced by a company called Cochineal Design Studio. Here is a weaving designed in the software that I use called Stitch Painter. This piece called Our Community is a Tapestry was later donated to our local YMCA. So here's the cartoon generated by the software. There's the weaving, and there I am giving a talk about the weaving, wearing essentially the same outfit. Here's another piece designed in Stitch Painter. It's an actual screenshot from the software. And I'm able to import my own photos, which is a nice advantage to this software. And the software will, which is perfect for weaving. A photograph that I took outside my house looking at the lake, which you can't really see, but there's a tree out there. It's just a portion into three panels and woven as panels. There's that silhouette 1, 2, and 3. There it is. So the image on the left is the photo that has been digitized and turned into 3 panels. The image on the right is my artistic and woven interpretation of that image. As I explored ideas to incorporate into this series, the Wildflower series, I had decided to use my knowledge and unused degree in botany. Although I had never used my degree professionally, I had always had an interest in botanical and natural sciences. I had explored and read about an organization in Michigan called the Michigan Nature Association. They were doing research about Michigan's endangered wildflowers. So I began to do my own research about the wildflowers, causes of imperilment, studying maps, making drawings, and taking photos. I began to formulate an idea for the scope of this series and who might benefit by viewing it when complete. One by one, I began my research and design process for each wildflower that would be in the series. Up to this point, my work had generally been very geometric, which you had seen, geometric in design, as we saw in the earlier slides. So it would be a challenge to design organic shapes and express my vision of flowers in all their many colors. Using tools like Stitch Painter, a light box, and graph paper, I designed and completed 12 panels for the exhibit. And here they are. The flowers are, reading from left to right, Lakeside Daisy. These are the common names. I'm not giving you the scientific names. Lakeside Daisy, Pitcher's Thistle, Michigan Monkey Flower. Moonwort, Round-leaved Orchid, and Pogonia. False Foxglove, Dwarf Iris, Houghton's Goldenrod, Prairie Fringed Orchid, Painted Trillium, and Gentian. So this is the cartoon that I used to weave Houghton's Goldenrod, or Solidago houghtoni. Forgive my Latin if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Named for the botanist Douglas Houghton, Michigan's first state geologist. And so here's that video of slides. This collection of images shows the process in making one of the weavings, Houghton's Goldenrod. You will see an image of the flower. Was it not wanting to load? Yarn samples, shuttles loaded with yarn, the weaving at the loom, and the finished weaving and more. So there's the finished weaving right there. My messy floor full of yarns. That red yarn was made by a woman, Loretta Klein, I think, from downstate here. and her own sheep, and she dyed the wool, and then she just sent me the yarn, and I chose that one weaving. It just fit so perfectly. Well, I apologize for that. It worked perfectly at my house. So there it is at the loom. So I chose a framework in the design that would unify each panel. So you could see that here on the images and also on the weavings on the wall. Each one has that framework. And I'm talking about this right here and the same over there. I thought it was important to have a similar design element that brought all the woven panels together. When I'm using the shaft switching technique, I weave with 2 shuttles at a time. Each shuttle is carrying 3 strands of rug wool, usually of slightly different shades of the same color. This technique is useful to enhance an area and also enable me to gradate my colors by dropping one strand and adding a new one as the weaving progresses. All of the panels were finished with 2 rows of Damascus knots, and the warps were braided using the same techniques I had learned in that first workshop in the mid-90s. To complete the series, I created 4 notebooks or journals to accompany the exhibit. Each tab within gives information about the threatened or endangered wildflower, the common and scientific names, maps of where it can be found, photos, my cartoons or printouts that I used while weaving, and yarn samples that were used. I also included my artist statement for the series and suggestions to minimize threatened species and loss of habitat. Artists usually create an artist statement for an exhibit or a body of work, and my statement for this series is as follows. Not sure if I need to, there we go. There we go. A Weaver's Journal of Endangered Wildflowers. First and foremost, I am a weaver and I speak in yarn and color. Speaking in this language of fiber can be a challenging endeavor, but the fiber speaks to me too. This current series of 12 woven panels, so named, is a Weaver's Journal of Endangered Wildflowers. Like a botanist or naturalist who is out in the field collecting specimens, taking photos, and making quick sketches in their journal, I'm mimicking those actions. This series is like a journey connecting me to my roots of botanical studies and love of plants and wildflowers. I've accepted the challenge, turning woven yarn into soil, forest litter, plants, and leaves. Concerned for the future of all threatened species, Michigan's wildflowers are near and dear to me. Michigan has many unique habitats and is home to many endangered and special species of plants. This woven series of Michigan's endangered wildflowers will bring attention to their threatened and sometimes endangered status. I've had people come up to me after a talk like this and say, well, I knew there were endangered animals, but I had no idea that there were endangered plants too. So it's nice to know that I'm bringing some knowledge and awareness out and about. This series is a reflection of my interests, travels, and research in the botanical world of Michigan. With this field guide of woven panels, I hope to bring attention to Michigan's many wildflowers and those that we are in danger of losing. I also created a game, the Endangered Wildflower Game. This game is used for children of all ages, of course, while they're viewing the exhibit. I felt it helped them to look for things and see the exhibit in a new way. It also helped bring about more conversations while they were engaging in the experience. I also thought it was important to share with the viewers of my work ways in which they could protect native plants. So I had the small list printed and posted in all of the journals and on the walls of the exhibit halls, easily viewed by anyone who entered. People often ask, but what can I do? And I feel this might be one small step to bring awareness. What can I do to help prevent extinction of species? Learn more about the endangered and threatened species. Understand how the destruction of habitat leads to loss of endangered and threatened species and our nation's plant and animal diversity. Volunteer at your local zoo, wildlife refuge, or nature center. Work with their staff or community members to maintain and restore habitat. Protect native plants by cleaning your shoes after hiking to avoid spreading invasive plants, seeds, and staying on trails if you are hiking in an area with rare plants in the understory. Grow native plants in your lawn and garden, but obtain the plants from local nurseries. Do not dig up native plants from natural areas. Avoid using invasive, non-native plants in your landscaping, such as purple loosestrife, bush honeysuckles, and burning bush. I'm happy to say the series was completed on time and first in Grand Rapids, Central Michigan University's Baber Gallery, the Ridges Wildlife Sanctuary in Door County, Wisconsin, the Fine Line Creative Arts Center near Chicago, Northern Michigan University, Gifts of Art University of Michigan's Hospital in Ann Arbor, and Lake Effect Arts Center in Manistee, Michigan. Also shown, the series was also shown in the 2019 conference for the Wildflower Association of Michigan. This wildflower series has brought me in touch with some amazing people and new relationships. One such partnership is with the Wildflower Association of Michigan. I think they're doing great things, and I've pledged 5% of sales from this series to their organization. At this time, my weavings from this series are for sale on a made-to-order basis, so it's not a cash and carry situation. But if you said, oh, I really love Pitcher's Thistle, which seems to be everybody's favorite, I would remake that. I want to close with some thoughts I've had lately and how I can share my beliefs with you and others. My husband and I recently built a new home on the shores of Lake Michigan in what is considered a wetlands area. I think I need to back up one slide. Maybe I'm still here. Anyway, so we've been there. We moved in 2019. And like I said, it is a wetlands area and it's right on Lake Michigan. This was a huge undertaking in so many ways. One of our concerns was that we be good stewards of the land that we are inhabiting. One of my mentors, and you might know about him, is Doug Tallamy. Anybody here ever hear of Doug Tallamy? He is an American entomologist, ecologist, and conservationist. He's a professor in the Department of Entomology and Wildlife Ecology at the University of Delaware. Tallamy advocates for home gardens and landscaping that bridge the gaps between parks and preserves in providing habitat for native species. I've seen him speak in person and on YouTube. He's got many YouTube presentations there. And if you don't know about Douglas Talmy, you really should. So I've been trying to adopt his philosophy of turning my yard and garden into a small preserve. I'm missing some slides. Well, we'll just go there. I still have a lawn, but within my lawn, I have created small islands of native plants. I work with my local college greenhouse where they plant and sell native plants each year. I'm incorporating more and more native plants into our property. It says seen here, but you cannot. I've been planting cup plant, heliopsis, butterfly weed, planting Joe Pye weed. And I just found on our property, and I didn't plant it, and this really makes me feel good, fireweed, which is a native. So it's coming. And I'm hoping this area where it is, it's just gonna kind of overtake that whole area. That would make me feel very good. So that's already growing on our property. This last image shows me in front of my wildflower billboard. This was part of a juried public art competition. The winner's work to be blown up and displayed on a billboard in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan on US Highway 2. Mine was displayed near Gould City, about 90 miles from my home, a very proud moment. You can learn more about me and my weaving journey on my Facebook page, on Instagram, or my website, www.carolirving.com. Thank you all for coming, for your interest in my art and your kind words. A special thanks to Crooked Tree Arts Center and their staff for inviting me to exhibit and talk to you today. Do you have any questions? Yes.
I just want to say, Carol, I really enjoyed talking to you at the gallery opening, the show opening.
That's great.
And appreciate you bringing this to us and sharing so much more about it.
Oh, thank you. I do remember talking with you. Great. Great. Any other? And we can talk weaving technique or whatever you like. Yep.
Yes, so we can blast into how this is taken.
Always. Yeah. Where should I begin? I took them one by one and from design. I didn't design all of them at once. I started with Pitcher's Thistle was my first one. So I designed it, I wove it, I took it off the loom, I finished the ends, and then started that whole process again. Picked the next one, design, researched it too. So there was all of that. It was taking me about a month from research, design, weaving, finishing, about a month. That is good. I'm not, for whatever reason, and I was working during the day. So I'm not doing that now. I feel like, and I'm retired, and I just feel like life has intruded. It pulls me in oh so many ways. So. Sure.
You were saying you put out like 20.
Yep, 20 yards.
You did that one and cut it off. You built it still for the next one.
Yes,
To go.
yes. And that's how the Harrisville loom works.
That's very time consuming, setting that up.
Yes, each and every time. Yeah. You don't want to do that. You want to minimize all that setup, especially if you know you're going to be doing 9 to 10 pieces. So you put on as much warp as you can. And the warp is designed, or the loom is designed, it has something on it called a warp extender. So you take off that back beam as enough warp to weave that project. And you are never unwinding that back beam throughout that project again. It's going up and over that warp extender. The warp extender comes down as you're weaving. So you always have perfect tension throughout the project. Then when you cut it off, you're still threaded through the heddles, through the reed, and you cut that off and you maintain that threading, and then you retie onto your apron, your beam, your front beam, and you retension all over again. So it really works well for that. It's a great loom. Even if I wasn't, because it comes with 2 sets of harnesses. It comes with the shaft switching harnesses, and it comes with a different set of 4 harnesses. And so I have woven yardage and made like a shirt, a blouse with it. So you can do, it's very versatile. So even if, and you could weave other types of rugs on it, you know, plain weave, or who is it? Rebecca Mezoff uses it, but she doesn't use the shaft switching mechanism, but she's doing her tapestries on there.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about both your design process and your sort of conceptualization in the abstraction. So you, from what I understand, you identify flowers you want to work with. You do some research, and then there's a photographic image. And how do you get? There are a few pieces to this question. How do you get to that photographic image? And then you're working with the software.
Yeah, stitch
and
painter.
so there's some abstraction in filtering this image through stitch painter, but then you're making other color decisions. Like one of the things I notice about your work is, for example, the middle piece there, you've got this sort of band of these bright yellows, and you know, there's sort of the interpretation involves bands of palettes.
Yes.
And so that stitch painter isn't necessarily giving you that, so then there's another intervention in coming up with.
Right. Well, the technique of shaft switching is limiting in that you can only weave 2 colors on a horizontal. And so you have to start getting very creative on how you're going to interpret that image and show as many colors as you possibly can. You just have to be creative. And sometimes that means using stitch painter only if you're able. Sometimes you might have to incorporate the graph paper or a light box or whatever it takes to get that cartoon or the woven image in place. And a lot of it too is the gradation of color. So it's an artistic interpretation. It's by no means an exact copy.
So when you're looking for, do you go out in the field and make photographs, or you just find?
A little bit of both. I might have more than one image that I'm working from at the same time. So it's a little bit of both.
Notice with the starry night piece that you did not have fringe. A few of the pieces, like these, you know, this series all has fringe. So how do you decide when you're going to have fringe and when you're not?
Yeah, well, that was the technique that I learned when I took the class with Peter Collingwood, and that's how he taught us. And I continued on that vein. And then I started exploring galleries, and I had one gallery owner say, I really like your work. I really like your contemporary work, which he wasn't interested in these at all. But I don't like the fringe. He goes, it looks too folksy, too craftsy. And so I started in what you have to do to get rid of the fringe. The fringe is always there, but you have to needle weave it in. And so I've started doing that.
I have another question. I'm just very impressed. And I wonder how you get the word out for again, how frequent you get students.
I had a student last year. I'm on Facebook, and I have my own personal face, Carol Irving, like many of us do. But then I also have my art Facebook page, Carol Irving Fiber Artist. And I post there. There's also a group I'm part of. I'm part of quite a few Facebook weaving groups. And then there's one for just shaft switching. And, you know, you just mention some things and then people start private messaging you. And before long, you send them your email. And so last year I had a weaver who had gone all the way to Great Britain, spent a week with Jason Collingwood, who is Peter Collingwood's son, and woven with him, and still didn't feel competent enough. She had the loom, never used it, and did not feel competent enough to get it going. So she came and spent a week with me and lodged with me and everything, but we hardly took advantage of the walking trails or we was weaving the whole time. So she was interested in the stitch painter and learning how to design there. And going from design to the loom and how to do that. And then I also sent her home with another warp. I had her make a second warp, and she took that home with her so that she would have a good start. She could go right to the loom and put that on there without hesitation. And I think she did that. I did hear from her. I think she said her husband was not doing well, was a little bit ill. So that might have been taking up some of her time. So. Danny.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Could you talk a little bit about your leaf structure that you're using for
Yeah.
the botanicals?
The weave structure is the same weave structure for all the shaft switching pieces. The botanical ones, the geometric, they're all the same. It's the same threading throughout. And it's kind of a block threading. I don't have an image of it because I just didn't think this was the audience for that, but I will talk about it. Let's see if I can remember it in my head. So it's one warp thread goes on I believe it's a 3. And then what happens, it's almost like a floating selvage, if you all know what a floating selvage, or many of you do, which means that the warp's not going through a heddle. And in this case, it's sandwiched between two empties. One, in this case, it's a 1 sandwiched between an empty 1 and an empty 4, which allows it to act like either a 1 if you want it to, or a 4 if you want it to. And the lever that you saw on the loom, and the levers, if they're this way towards me, it'll act as a 4, I believe. And if the lever's away, it will act as a 1. And that determines the pattern. So just on that one horizontal, it will determine whether it's a dark or a light. It's very binary. It's dark or it's light. Unless you want an intense amount of color, because sometimes the background color bleeds through a little bit. And in that case, if I can, I'll weave with 2 shuttles of the same color. And that gives you a really nice dark color. Does that explain what you needed?
Every pick you're going through all of these.
Not every pick. It's 4 rotations. It's actually 16 picks altogether. And then I change the lever. Then I flip it. Yep. So a square on my graph paper, whether it's virtual or real, a square there is equal to 16 throws of the shuttles. And again, I'm using 2 shuttles, but still, so it's, and I'm alternating. So I go light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. There are other things you can do. Sometimes it's light, dark, dark, but for the most part, that's what it is, alternating. This is 4 working ends. I'm using an 8-dent reed, and every other one, it's a single and then a double and then a single and a double. And that's in the heddle and in the reed. And in the reed, it skips every other one. So it's a single skip, a double skip, repeat, repeat, repeat.
So that really helps that.
It does. Yes, yes. That four ends, four working ends. Yes, it really helps. If you're not getting good coverage, I would say your weft is too heavy. Your yarn is either too heavy or most of my weft yarns are approximately 900 to maybe 1100 yards per pound. They kind of fluctuate, and especially because so many of them are mill ends, so I don't always know what I'm getting.
I have a question. That's a weird question. So when you are starting, say you ran out of your yarns and how do you
Join?
join them?
Yep. So and on your tail, you have three ends, and I usually bring them out of the weaving, okay, at three different places. And then I send my next shuttle, the new one with the new yarn, same color, you wind on more, with the three ends, and I have them, let's see if we can mimic it. These are the warp ends, and it's coming out in three separate places. And then the new one's gonna join that, and I'll have them just come out in the exact same places, just on other sides. I usually like to have it on either side of a doubled warp end. And that way it almost that doubled warp end creates like a channel in the weaving. And I like to do what I call housekeeping. So a lot of tapestry weavers wait to the end of the project and do their housekeeping. I do it as I go along. And then I have a special needle and I go down, unless it's at the very beginning of the project, then I work them up and in, but I work them down in there and then I pull it, snip it off, and it just kind of goes back into the woven structure. And I've never had an issue of it popping out or anything like that.
Have any more questions? Hey, Carol, that was just wonderful.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
thank you.